to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Allie.
And the WSL season has kicked off. The NWSL is in full playoff picture mode. This is when we thrive, Allie. We thrive when there's too many games to watch. And we have to sit on our couch for 24 hours and watch soccer. What a tough life that is.
Oh, it's so hard. It was so hard this weekend to watch all of the football.
No, but you weren't on your couch this weekend because you and Mike and listeners, you've probably heard Mike's name before. He edits this podcast. He's the reason it sounds so wonderful. Thank you, Mike. Allie, you and Mike hung out and did not get a picture for me. I knew this was happening. I was so excited. I was like, they're going to send me a picture of them together. I meant to text you and say, send a pic, but I didn't. And then lo and behold, the day came and went and no pic. So now you get to tell me about it. How was the day? Tell us.
I mean, apart from the result as a West Ham fan, it was actually a great day. I was sat with my West Ham lot and Mike was like, oh, I'm going to be in Manchester anyway. I might get a ticket. I was like, come in the West Ham end. Come on. We'll put you in as a temporary hammer for the day. And you know what? It was a good laugh. We enjoyed the disappointment. Mike was having a great time because he was checking the Brighton score.
I was going to say.
He was having a great time. We went to the pub. We were drinking pints at 10 o'clock in the morning because that's what you do at football.
How wonderful.
It was great to catch up with Mike, and we're going to do the Brighton West Ham game together as well. So he will not be in the West Ham end for that.
I can't wait for that one. I'm going to say, based on this weekend, I'm going to give the odds to Brighton. But again, we will come on to that. All right. We've got a great episode, a big episode. Like we said, it's the start of the WSL season. NWSL playoff race is hot. There are 4 spots left in the playoffs and 5 match days remaining. And before we get into the rest of the episode, we have to mention, number 1, we promised that we'd cover NewCo quickly and what that is. So we're going to do that in today's episode as well. But it has to be said, Kelly O'Hara, unfortunately, was placed on the injury list for the rest of the season, which means that she has played her final soccer game and we didn't even know what was happening. And somebody let it be known to the internet that she actually played her final game on the same day that Alex Morgan played her final game. And that's wild. She's still going to have her retirement ceremony at Red Bull Arena at Gotham's last home game. That'll be October 20th, I believe, when they host Orlando, which that's going to be a fun one anyways. But, you know, TBD if we cover that, Allie, because I think I'm a little gun shy of covering any retirements anymore. What a weekend of football it was. The Barclays WSL 2024-2025 season has officially kicked off. And after week 1, Brighton sit alone at the top. Brighton fans, it's lonely at the top, isn't it? My goodness. Social media was so fun if you just went on the Brighton side of social media this weekend. I have never seen people more happily tweeting in my entire life. I think we just have to kick it off with that. There's so much to discuss, but oh my gosh, did Brighton make a statement, and Brighton fans bask in this because you currently sit atop the table.
Stop the count. It's over. It be done.
You know, at the end of the season, we're just going to see screenshots of this week and potentially what could have been. Sorry, Brighton fans. I don't mean to stomp on this. Actually, what I do want to say is, you know, we don't want to jump the gun. This was week 1, but Kiko Seke had a debut of all debuts. It was the first time anybody in WSL history scored a hat trick on their debut, and what a hattie it was. And then Fran Kirby, the one and only, finished it off with her first ever goal in Brighton colors. 4-0. Brighton took it, and under a new manager with those 2 additions plus Nikita Paris, what a first weekend for Brighton. I know this is kind of jumping the gun, but I mean, I'm excited for Brighton, so I'm going to ask it. Are they a mid-table contender? Are they a mid-table threat? Could they do some damage in the middle there?
I mean, they've signed so well. They've had a great transfer window with the names that they've managed to do. So, yeah, I think they're going to be up there. It's interesting because I know a lot of Brighton fans weren't particularly sold on the new manager. I believe the word Nepo baby was used a few times. So it'll be interesting to see how he does and if he can keep this momentum, because Everton weren't fantastic. And it'll be interesting to see how because they take on one of the Manchester clubs, I believe, very soon. Yeah, they take on Manchester City next game. So it'll be interesting to see, because they have been a bogey team for Manchester City in the past. So
yeah, but with my luck, Allie, I'm gonna big up Brighton this week, and then next week I'm gonna be like, oh, I'll eat my words now. All right, before we get into the rest of this, for the rest of the WSL coverage, we're gonna do first a quick fire, bunch of different topics, quick hits, and then we're gonna get into the game of the week. But before we do so, I also want to give a shout out to the one and only, how can you not love her, Jordan Nobbs, because this is her 15th season in the WSL, and she is officially the only player to play in every single season of the WSL. And honestly, when I read that, I knew how new the WSL was, but that really puts it into a good perspective, how new this league truly is and how much it's grown in such a short period of time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've had a few players last season that had played in every single season, but we had a few retirements and a few people moving to different leagues. But yeah, Jordan Nobbs is a absolute legend, and for her to have played, it just shows you how young she was when she started.
That's true.
Making me feel so old. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Well, because she's not old now.
No, she's not. That's
Jordan Nobbs,
it makes me feel so old.
31 years old. Quick math, Allie. What does that make her when she started? 16, the inaugural WSL season. Woo-wee. I was still trying to figure my stuff out in high school. Okay, we've got some quick fire topics just from the weekend of WSL. There's so much to cover here. I'll just say up front, we're not going to be able to cover everything. We could do a 2-hour-long episode and just barely touch on everything we want to touch on for the WSL. But this is a great way to get as many things in as we want to. So, Allie, kick it off with the quick fire.
So, quick fire, very quick. This was brought to the attention by one of our Canadian listeners, Katie, which is, it seems that YouTube is geo-blocked in certain countries, and for her in Canada, so I know one of their sports networks is called SN Plus or Rogers, that they had, it's not one I'm particularly familiar with, has the rights to the WSL, so therefore they will stop the stream on YouTube, which is fair enough, except for they weren't playing the games. So they had blocked the stream because they own the rights to the WSL, but they weren't showing the game, which I believe was Liverpool-Leicester.
Yeah, that's wild. Any Canadian listeners, give us a shout. Let us know what's going on, because obviously we're just hearing about this, word of mouth. We can't go to Canada and fact check this. But that's pretty crazy. I mean, we'll get into NUCO because NUCO does have something to do with this, and the reason why it's been such a disaster in terms of, for example, everybody in the US was like, if it's not on YouTube, who has the rights? Everybody thought it was CBS because they've owned the rights previously. It's not CBS. There had to be a new rights owner, and the deal got done within the 24 hours before the first game kicked off of this season. So everything's just been pretty touch and go this year so far, kicking it off. And it seems like, I don't know what happened in Canada, but hopefully they fix that for next week, because that's pretty brutal. VPN, everybody. VPN.
So the next one, and this one is one of those ones where I'm like, I wish I was more surprised than I actually was. So
you're really bringing us down today, Allie. I was really flying high. I was excited for Brighton and ready to talk about the first weekend. And I can already tell from your tone that this is going south again.
I know. I'm such a Debbie Downer. But again, it's been picked up by other fans and they have brought it to my attention. So anybody who's based in the UK will be aware that Sky Sports has its own WSL channel to bring all of the coverage of the WSL. And yet again, they are only focusing on the top 3 teams. I'm all about a cute dog. I like a cute dog, but if I have to see another story about the fact that Beth Mead and Vivian Miedemar's dog has to travel between Manchester and London, I am going to scream. That dog has had more coverage than the bottom 6 teams have had entirely. And I believe there was a stat last season where it was something stupid that Bristol, West Ham, Everton and Leicester only had 1% of the coverage compared to Manchester City, Arsenal, Chelsea had something stupid like 60% of the coverage on this channel. And I was like, I get it. The top 3 gets you clicks, but there are 12 teams in this league.
I have a hot take on this. And
oh dear, here we go. Go on, Arsenal fans, Sarah. No. Let's see where you're going with that.
No, shut up. I was also thinking, well, that's why you tune into podcasts like these. Okay, now let's get into our game of the week, Arsenal versus City. But it's true. That's why you tune into podcasts like these. Because unfortunately, like, this doesn't mean it's right. And I'm not trying to say, like, tough luck, wash it off. It doesn't mean it's right. But that is the world of major sports media. That happens in every single sport in this country as well. There's a reason that, you know, they only focus on New York and LA. I can't tell you how many times I've sat here yelling at the TV, talk about San Francisco's teams. Like, it happens everywhere. You do what gets you clicks. And I'll bring it back to, that doesn't make it right. And that's why you tune in to shows like these. And just because we're covering Arsenal City next does not mean we are the same. No. We do try to make like a very valiant effort to spread the love around. And we will prove that to you next week, everybody. With that being said, before we get into our game of the week, I do want to ask you, because there were so many fun games this weekend. We had Crystal Palace WSL debut. Was there a game that surprised you or a performance that most excited you?
I'm going to go with performance that most excited me. And I'm not going to go for the obvious, you know, like the underdogs like Brighton or one of the traditional top
excuse me. Sorry that I went for Brighton.
So I'm actually going to go for Leicester because they were taking on Liverpool. It was the other draw. It was 1-1. And Liverpool, if anybody listened to us last season, as you should have done, will know that they had the most amazing season for Liverpool. They finished 4th. They went on this insane run thing. And they have signed well and have really solidified their team. So you expect them to go and dominate again. Leicester went 1-0 down and then came back with such force to get that draw. I was unsure about Leicester at the beginning, like when we were doing our preview, and they are just such a connected, solid team, and I think they're going to be a dark horse to watch out for. They were, for me, the surprise performance of the week.
For me, it was Aston Villa. I'm not going to lie. They were a question mark in my mind because of what high expectations we had at the beginning of last year and then how far they just plummeted. It's funny because I think back to the first game they played last year, and I believe it was that United game where they could have won and it ended in a draw, and then there was a red card as well to Hansen, and it just felt like that was a great start, and then the rest of the season plummeted. So I'm going to say this with trepidation. This was a great start for Aston Villa. Yes, they lost 1-0 against Chelsea, but they could have had equalizers. They had incredible performances across the field and specifically also in goal. Outstanding performance. So I'm excited to see more from Villa. It just feels like they've gelled this season in a way that we didn't see last year. I'm excited to see more from that.
Also, do you want to laugh? Just because this is a fun fact that made me giggle. Brooke Aspin got sent off at the end of the Crystal Palace Tottenham game. So she's banned for 1 game. The next game that Crystal Palace play is Chelsea, which she's not eligible for. This is the most stupid ban.
That's great, though. I mean, that's great for Crystal Palace and her.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure it won't carry over. But yeah, so because she's on loan from Chelsea, Chelsea won't let her play against them. So a 1-game ban is against a club she can't play against anyway.
Speaking of players on loan, we talked a lot about Grace Clinton, who was on loan at Tottenham last year. She's back with Manchester United this year, and she's such a shining star. And she came out with a bang. I mean, you wouldn't know that that was a brand new team. She fit in so beautifully. Another player we're just so excited to see more from. Not to bring up one of the top clubs like big media does.
Speaking of big clubs, should we do our game of the week?
Let's do it.
Our game of the week was Arsenal versus Manchester City. It ended 2-2. This was always going to be a huge clash, and you felt like the organisers picked this to be the opening game for a reason for these two. It was at the Emirates. They managed to get a 40,000 attendance, which is huge. And this was just a massive game. It was Vivian Miedema's return to the Emirates, but in a sky blue shirt instead of a red shirt. You know, there was so much riding on this game. How do you think? Do you think a draw was fair? Do you think one should have taken it or not?
I think a draw was pretty fair. I'm going to try to be objective here. I think a draw was a fair result based on the full 90 minutes. It's still so weird to see Vivian Miedema in different colors. Just like I really can't get used to seeing Lucy Bronze in different colors. That's super odd to me for some reason. My eyes do not adjust. Yeah, you know, I think there's obviously, rightly so, a lot of discussion about how there was a goal from Caitlin Ford that was called offside. It wasn't offside. I agree it wasn't offside, but at the end of the day, I think this was a really fair result. I think these two teams, they did different things well, right? Like, I think Arsenal were much more dynamic in how they moved forward, and I thought that they created more dangerous chances, but City were, I think, more dominant in possession. They actually got more shots on target, even though they got fewer shots and I think fewer dangerous opportunities. But like I said, they both did different things well. And I thought all in all, it was a great game of football. You could tell that both of these teams had played some Champions League matches already because they didn't look like they were in beginning of season form. They looked solid. They looked cohesive. And it was, in my opinion, just a really fun game of football to watch.
As a neutral, it was fantastic to watch. It was an absolute game-changing game of football. Mm-hmm. I really, really did enjoy it because they felt so evenly matched. Like you said, they didn't feel like they were rusty or just coming out the gate. They seemed really well matched, and it was interesting to see, you know, Greenwood with the armband officially.
Love to see that.
Heitman's retirement means she's officially passed it on, and it is now Greenwood's. And I thought she did fantastic controlling her back line. Get onto that left flank in a moment. But all in all, I thought it was a good game of football. I was surprised by both teams' goalkeeper choices. I'm going to put that out there.
I'm glad that was the next thing I was going to talk about. I was going to say it was a great game. I think the shakiest places for both teams was in the net. And we saw both keepers make one or two very questionable decisions. We've talked about, I've had questions around why Manuela Zinsberger is the starting goalkeeper for Arsenal, and is that a place that they might need to level up? And then I think Yamashita in goal for Manchester City, that was also a question mark with the young Chiara Keating on the bench. I'm wondering if she's injured or something. I didn't understand why Chiara Keating wasn't in goal.
Yeah, it made no sense to me. I was like, you picked up a ban or like you're there?
I really do think, Allie, we must be sitting here missing something. And listeners, please let us know what it is, because I don't know. Obviously, there were some news reports coming out from this past summer about, we don't even need to get into it because I think it's ridiculous to get into right now. But yeah, if you have Chiara Keating at your disposal, I think it's a good time to play her when you're going into the Emirates. But other than that, I mean, you look across the board, obviously we can get nitpicky here and we can start, I can say where I think Arsenal might need to grow. Maybe you can check in on where you think City need to grow. But all in all, I think a stunning first performance for both of these teams. And I love that it was at the Emirates. Arsenal are going to play 11 games at the Emirates this season. 8 of those are going to be WSL games.
This game, of course, wasn't exactly perfect, and there is still some room to grow for both teams if they want to be serious title contenders. My thing for Man City, I have to say, is they need to work on their left flank. They had Greenwood, who's a very experienced left back, and she was controlling that back line, but they were getting turned over on the left so many times. It's how they conceded that first goal within 8 minutes. And they just kept getting exploited. And frankly, if Arsenal could shoot better, it would have been an Arsenal win. I'm also going to say, looking at the stat, there was 5 yellow cards and all 5 went to Man City in that game. So maybe they need to work on their behaviour.
That's funny. I like that you picked that out. I'm going to go defensively also and say that there's been a rotating cast of center backs for Arsenal over the past few years. And there's not been one singular pairing that you can point to and say that's our solid 2 leaders. They work well together. They control the back line, so on and so forth. And especially now, I think Wubben-Moy and Codina need to develop a really strong connection. I think part of why Manchester City's first goal went in is because there was a little bit of mispositioning out, kind of some backs out of position that allowed for the space even for Miedema to get through. So I think I'm going to go with center back as well. I just want to see them gel a little bit more. All right, that's it for Game of the Week. We're still going to talk Newco, but we're going to do that at the end of the episode. I know that still falls in kind of this WSL category, but we're going to take you around the world to the NWSL, and then we'll circle back to across the pond for Newco. So let's do it. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world.
To Spain, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid and Barcelona sit locked at 9 points each after 3 games. Surprisingly, Barcelona sit in 3rd place due to goal difference. The first meeting between one of these 3 clubs won't be for another 6 matches. Atletico will host Barcelona on November 10th. Can both these teams remain undefeated until then?
Over to Mexico and La Liga MX. Today, Wednesday, when this episode drops, is the beginning of match day 12 of 17 of the Apertura. Number 4, Pumas, play number 5, Guadalajara tomorrow, Thursday, while top 3 teams, Tigres, Pachuca, and Monterrey, all face opponents from the bottom of the table.
Finally, to Germany, the first meeting between Eintracht Frankfurt and Wolfsburg is scheduled for this Sunday. They sit locked at 7 points even in the table behind Bayern Munich. This game may play a huge role in who ends up second in the league.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
Over to the NWSL, and we've got a couple of hit points for around the league from this past week, and then we will get into that juicy playoff information so you know who's going where, what, and why. First off, the big one, Gotham at the White House. Gotham, who not only clinched a playoff place over the win over Utah this Sunday, they were also meeting the president. Was it due to their winning last season?
Yeah, due to winning a few months from exactly a year ago. The first NWSL team to be invited to the White House. I believe that's correct. Or it's the first NWSL championship team that was invited because they won. That's definitely correct. And I don't know if they do this over there or in any other country, but it's kind of become like customary for in the United States, if a team wins the league, if you won the NBA, you'd be invited to the White House. Same with the NFL, MLB. And it's been done in the past couple years with the WNBA. That's women's basketball. It's never been done, I guess, for the NWSL. So this is a big moment. And hey, what a weekend for Gotham, right? Clinching a playoff spot and going to meet Joe Biden. They dropped a full live stream so you could watch as Biden kind of gave a speech in front of the whole team. And at one point he called them the Bats of Gotham, asked if that was okay. And Midge Purse goes, "We prefer the baddies." And it was such a good, cute moment.
Wait, prefer the what?
So Midge Purse, Batties, but I think it's like a play on like we're also
that
baddies.
That would not fly over here. That would not fly over here. That's a homophobic slur over here.
Oh, for real? Oh, no. And not over here. It's like a hit phrase to be like, oh, she's a baddie.
Yes.
It's like a short
baddie,
for like...
Yes. Batty.
For like badass, basically.
A batty is a homophobic slur.
Okay, well, it's not over here. And so that was, I'm so sorry to anybody I just triggered because I had no idea. But no, for Midge and for everybody here, just to be clear, it was a play on the Bats of Gotham, like Batman, and combining that with baddie, B-A-D-D. Let's move on from there. I was like, this is so funny, and your face just dropped.
Oh no.
Well, hey, that's very good for me to know for the next time I visit.
That's cultural differences there.
Mm-hmm.
But talking of the White House visit, and again, it's something I'll put on our socials, there is a fantastic photo of Ali Krieger with Joe Biden where she's got him by the hand, and genuinely it looks like they're skipping down this like red carpet, and like Krieger's got the biggest grin on her face, and Joe Biden's sort of like, what are we doing?
Moving on from Gotham, we mentioned it, but back to the football of it. They clinched a playoff spot, like you said, with a 1-0 win on Sunday over Utah. They join Orlando, Washington, and Kansas City as the fourth team now to clinch a playoff spot. You guys remember back to last season when essentially everything came down to decision day, the final day. And now here we are. There's 5 games left in the season, and we already have half of the playoff spots filled. Now, what order that comes in, we're not sure. That doesn't necessarily mean that Orlando's going to be number 1 at the top when this is all said and done. But still, 4 playoff spots taken, 4 remaining. And we're going to talk about the playoff picture and what those 4 remaining look like in a moment. But as we did in the WSL, let's do some quick hits from around the NWSL from this past weekend.
Yeah. So, worryingly, Tiffany Rodman was taken off in a wheelchair due to a back spasm. She's dealt with back issues a lot recently, but it was quite jarring to see her go off in a wheelchair after the Spirit game.
Yeah, that was pretty terrifying, to say the least. Like you said, she's dealt with back injuries before. She's so young as well. We don't have any further updates on that right now at the time of recording, and we will keep everybody updated. Moving along to a positive, Anna Morehouse, the Orlando Pride goalkeeper, whose praises you have been singing for a long time, Allie. He's going to give you credit there.
West Ham goalkeeper whenever I talk about.
There you go. Another clean sheet on the list for Anna Morehouse with Orlando's 1-0 win over Bay FC. She set a new league record for shutouts with that shutout. 12 clean sheets in a season is the new NWSL league record. Good for her. And speaking of Orlando, they remain undefeated. Still 5 more games to go. You bet on them doing it. Just to be clear, I bet on potentially Washington beating them. So we'll see what happens. Orlando won 1-0 over Bay FC, but Bay FC is looking stronger and stronger. And I have to say, put up a great match versus the league leaders. Really had them not necessarily on the ropes because it would have ended 0-0 if Orlando hadn't scored. But I was impressed by the way Bay FC have played, and specifically Bay FC have leaked goals all season. So to keep Orlando to 1-0, and especially that deep into the game, really big props to Bay FC. They're deep in this playoff race. We'll come on to more of that in a moment. But their latest signing, Albie Dahlkemper, who we all know, said after the game, quote, "To be able to play with the confidence we played, the sky's the limit for this team. We are dangerous." What an addition. She has brought truly the veteran calmness, presence, everything that Bay FC needed. And it has felt like since she's joined that back line, it's just things are starting to click more with this team.
So it was great to see the amount of love that is coming Banda and Kundanaji's way. They played each other at the PayPal Park in the Bay Area, and you've seen Zambian flags everywhere, and it's just so beautiful to see that they are getting their flowers.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to see how proud they are too. Like the first goal Rachel Kundanaji ever scored for Bay FC, she ran to the sideline and grabbed a Zambian flag. And I know it pissed off some of the other team's supporters because she was like taking her time for a normal goal, but I personally loved it. There's just so much pride there, and obviously they're such a force together on the Zambian national team that I think everybody's just excited to see them on the same field again, even though they were on different teams. And of course, they've both made such a splash in the NWSL, Barbara Banda specifically, that, yeah, always fun to see.
Mine and Sarah's favorite fact that we found out is the
favorite's a loose word, but we'll use it.
So Barbara Banda was born the year that Marta made her debut. And with the goal she scored against Bay FC, she's now equaled Marta's record for season goals. Is not crazy? And they play on the same team. Like, is that not wild?
It really... No, it's one of those things that kind of does my head in. You know, like I can't think about it for too long, or I feel like I'm going kind of crazy. That's like, I think when Alex Morgan retired, she said that there are people on the team that are closer to her daughter's age than they are to her age. And I was like, hold on, what? Like, what's going on right now? It make me cry. The only thing that makes me feel older than that is looking at the year that they were born, because I can just watch Barbara Banda play. I can think, yeah, Marta's old. You know, of course that makes sense. But then you look at the year and you're like, oh, man.
I'm old.
For those of you wondering, that year is the year 2000. All right, and our final quick fact before we get into this picture is it has to be celebrated. Kansas City, Chowinga tallies her 16th goal of the season this past weekend. Now, the record for most goals in one single season is held currently and has been held by Sam Kerr. 2019, for the Chicago Red Stars, she tallied 18 goals in one season. There are 5 games left for Kansas City, and Chowinga is only 2 goals away from equaling that Sam Kerr record.
Shall we get into the playoffs and the many different permutations of what can happen? Because, as we mentioned, we've got 8 playoff places. 4 have already been clinched. Now, there is only 5 games left, but we don't know what order they will be, even though we know that 4 have been taken, because Orlando are guaranteed to finish in the top 4, whereas Washington and Gotham are guaranteed in the top 6. So, Sarah, is there anybody that is statistically eliminated and cannot qualify for these playoffs?
As of now, no. There is nobody statistically eliminated yet. Utah are 10 points behind the playoff line, and there is still potential. If you look at the games, there's, like you said, 5 games left. If you win every single game, the max potential is 15 points. If you win out the rest of your 5 games. So technically, nobody is statistically eliminated yet.
But it's unlikely. Let's be honest.
It is unlikely, yes. And listen, there's a million different variations of what could happen here because there are 5 games left. But at this point, you can look at the table and you can kind of chunk it into different sections. There's obviously the 4 teams that have clinched. And then there's this middle section of teams that are, I'll call it, in the hunt. And those could be teams that sit currently above the playoff spot, but there's still 5 games left. Or teams currently below the playoff spot, but just barely, and there's still 5 games left. And then the third chunk is kind of this bottom of the table, in which a couple, it's very much unlikely, almost not worth talking about how they could get there. And then a couple that, I mean, miracles could happen. You know what I mean?
Look at Gotham. It worked for Gotham.
That's right. So shall we talk first about who's in the hunt? Let's talk about the middle of the table, because the middle of the pack, we already mentioned there's 4 spots clinched. Let's talk about the middle of the pack, because that's where the meat of it is.
Yep. So it's likely to come down to a battle between Portland, Racing Louisville, Chicago, Bay FC, and Angel City for the final 4 spots. I think we're going to see a lot of movement between these teams as they play each other, will leapfrog over each other before the end of the season.
Yeah. I think it's going to be mayhem. Right now, obviously, those 4 teams that have already clinched sit in 1, 2, 3, 4. North Carolina sits in 5th place, and I feel like that's like a little bit of a precarious place. We didn't mention them in those 5 teams you just said: Portland, Racing, Chicago, Bay, and Angel City. I do think, like you just mentioned, I agree, we'll see a lot of movement, and it's probably going to come down to a battle between those 5. North Carolina, they're not safe yet, but they're in a good spot. They kind of sit in between the statistically safe and that group that I'll call in the hunt. They should feel comfortable, but of course anything can happen. But most likely, looking at this table, if North Carolina wins 2 out of their next 5 games, they're probably safe. Statistically speaking, 3 wins, they're safe. but I think more likely than not, they'll get in with 2. Oh, and we should note just really quick that we're recording this before the end of the Portland Angel City game that is happening on Monday night. So we don't know the scoreline there. That obviously will impact the table. And a big game for Angel City, who we just talked about, are very much in the hunt, but they sit right now in 10th, 2 spots below the playoff line, 4 points behind the playoff line as well.
The big 2, however, it's do or die for both Seattle and San Diego Wave. They sit 5 and 6 points behind that playoff line, respectively. 3 points next weekend is essential. It is imperative if they want to even give themselves a hope of a shot.
Yeah, this is what we call they're not in charge of their own destiny, but it's possible. You know, if they can win 4 of their last 5 games, plus have other playoff teams that are in the hunt lose games that they really should be winning, then they could sneak in. But they not only need to win out essentially almost all of their next games, but they also need help with the losses. So statistically, not impossible. But the issue is that they're not in control of their own destiny. It's possible that they win the next 4 out of their 5 games, but they still don't make the playoffs. That still could happen. And I guess we'll say Houston and Utah, probably not.
Probably not.
Probably at the end of the season, whoever doesn't make the playoffs, we'll do kind of a recap of their season. We'll touch on what went well, what went wrong, and what we hope can change for the future. But for now, we're deep in it. It's the NWSL playoff picture, and it is coming down to the wire, as it always does. Some huge games coming up this weekend. It'll be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. No Monday game this coming weekend, just Friday, Saturday, Sunday, as usual, everybody.
We promised you last week, and we're delivering this week, that we would give you a quick rundown about NWSL and who they are and what it means for women's football in specifically the English pyramid. Let's make that clear. It's not the UK, it's the English pyramid with what this means. So, first off, who are NWSL? NWSL are a new independent company that will run the women's professional game over here in England. It will mainly be Barclays WSL and the Championship, with the hopes that there will be some trickle down for the rest of the pyramid, and it will be clubs themselves will be shareholders in that company.
Yeah, that's the big difference. Well, one of the big differences, but I think that was one of the big headlines, that the clubs themselves are the shareholders in that company. And I guess the also big headline is that with this, NWSL takes over responsibility of the leagues from the FA, the all-powerful FA.
So what is their big goal? Their big goal is that it wants to start revenue generating, for-profit, standalone entities, so they can get away from their brother clubs to be professional and have a fully dedicated management team.
Yeah, I really love that. I mean, that's essentially saying a lot of what we've said many times, Allie, which is that the women's clubs are always overshadowed by the men's side. And this is trying to pull them away in a way that, like, the NWSL doesn't get overshadowed by the MLS because they are separate entities. This is trying to separate them as much as possible. So the idea of this also with regards to revenue is that we're now at a stage in women's football in England where women's football is set up to be a standalone entity, to capitalize on the growth and the opportunity that is in front of them moving forward. So NWSL itself is not fully formed yet. It's really new. Like, this news really only dropped, I would say, probably less than a year ago. I can't even remember at this point, but it's really fresh. Part of the reason, we already mentioned some broadcast deals, that all of this is coming together kind of at the last moment as this season is kicking off. But I think important to note that they've expressed that they intend to form a player advisory board as well, and a fan advisory board.
So it's the former Nike director, Nikki Doucette, is currently in charge and told the BBC over here that NWSL has a firm grip on what is required to make the league the most financially viable in the women's game. So those are some big words, big promises. So with all the high hopes and the promises that Nuco is aiming to deliver to the top 2 tiers of the English pyramid, I do have to highlight some news that's coming out of the lower tiers. I believe Solihull Moors are tier 4. And for people that follow the women's game over here, you will know the name Solihull Moors. They have been pivotal to the women's pyramid for so long. They used to ground share with Birmingham City before Birmingham City went over to St Andrews. And unfortunately, it's now come to light that they are not being treated very well by their brother club. I believe it's their captains had to make a statement on behalf of the entire team, just essentially saying that it came to light they've had to forfeit a couple of matches and everybody was a bit concerned about what was going on. And the captain has turned around and said that they are enduring conditions that no team at any level should be expected to tolerate. Ill-fitting kits, a lack of basic equipment, no provision of transport for away games, no guaranteed pitch to play on if their game falls on a mid-week. They had to forfeit a game against West Brom, which meant that they got fined because there was no legitimate reason why they shouldn't be able to field a team. They've been told that they'll have to pay £2,600 to allow them to play on the men's pitch at Solihull Moors if they want to avoid further deduction and further fines. And they basically want to highlight this and get this out there because it's all been done behind closed doors.
Yeah, I guess, we always say this, but we always say it because it's true. We don't bring this up to be a bummer. We don't bring this up to complain about it. We bring it up because these are the type of stories that don't get the news and the coverage that they deserve. And they're important to also know about because with amazing growth, there's still a long way to go. And I think that's a good way to end it here. So that's it for this episode of the Women's Soccer Show. But if you want more, you can head over to our Patreon account, patreon.com/TheWoso Show, and you can find more there. But until next time, we'll see you next Wednesday. I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.